Okay, class, what I want to do in this video is teach you how to do a word study in the original language without knowing the original language. It's a really, really valuable thing to know. And first, let me cover a couple of things about words in general. Um, Number one, words have a range of meaning. So that's why when you look up a word in an English dictionary, you're going to get not just one meaning, but several meanings. For example, I got these actually from Ken Ham. He talks about this phrase: when I got back, I sat back with my back on the back of my chair in the back of the room. Exact same English word, but five different nuances in one sentence. So, how do you know what nuance to use? Well, looking up the word back in a dictionary isn't going to help you. It may give you some different nuances, but it's the context that gives you the nuance. Um, so, a lot of people think that, oh, if I learn Greek, then I will have all the magical meanings of Scripture. And sometimes when a pastor says, well, in the Greek, that word is, and then he gives the dictionary definition. Actually, it's not that easy because even Greek words, they don't all have the exact same meaning in the same context. So, what a word study does is it allows you to study a word in Greek or Hebrew in its context, and you want to find out the various ranges of meaning in different contexts. And then what that tells you is the possible meanings of a word. And then you want to study the context of the verse you're studying and see which of those ranges of meanings is most likely. Another example, back in Granddad's day, it took 3 days to drive across Texas during the day. So here, day means three different things. Back in Granddad's day, meaning his era, it took 3 days, three 24-hour days, to drive across Texas during the day when the sun is shining. All right? Same sentence, three words, three different meanings, same essential meaning, though. All right? So, next thing, to do a biblical word study, you need a concordance keyed to Greek and Hebrew words. Why? Well, one, English Bibles can translate different Greek words with the same English word. So, for example, the classic example is in John 21. Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? It's the word agape or agapao. Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you, but Peter uses the word phileo. In English, it's just the word love, but in Greek, we have two different words. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love, agapo, me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love, phileo, you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love, phileo, me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love, phileo, me? So here's a question. Why is Peter hurt? Because Jesus asked him three times, bringing back his three denials? Or because Jesus switched from agape to phileo on the third time? I don't know the answer to that, but you wouldn't even know that it's a question unless you knew that the different Greek words were being used for the same English word. Therefore, when you study, you want to have access to the Hebrew and Greek words. You say, but I don't know Hebrew and Greek. I'm going to show you a tool where you don't need to know Hebrew and Greek, and you're able to do all this with this tool. It's a free online tool. All right. Second thing, English Bibles can translate the same Greek word with different English words. For example, in Hebrews 5:11, the writer says, we have much to say about this, but it's hard to explain because you are slow to learn. And you go, I wonder if they had like learning disability or dyslexia. Well, if you do a word study, you find that this Greek word only occurs two times in the Bible. The other time it appears is in the very next chapter, Hebrews 6:12. We do not want you to become lazy. That's the exact same word. So what we see here is if the words are being used in a similar way, and they probably are because they're in the same context, their slowness to learn was not a learning disability, it was moral laziness. But you learn that by knowing that the same Greek word can be translated differently in English. Now, how do you get to the Greek and the Hebrew? Well, there is a program called eSword that you can download online. Just go to e-sword.net and you download it. And here it is. Let me call it up. When you download it, whoop, end the show. There we go. When you download it, what it is it comes with the ESV translation, and you can actually increase the font. Hopefully this will help you. So you've got the ESV. It also has a Greek translation with all the words parsed for you. Don't worry about that if you don't know Greek. It also comes with the King James Version, but here's the really cool tool, King James Plus. Every English word has a number. This is Strong's number from the Strong's Concordance. A guy named Strong, before there were computers, looked up every occurrence of every word in the Bible and assigned a number to it. For all eternity, the word neither will be G3383. You know, in the millennium, we'll be in a lecture hall, and whoever's teaching, maybe Paul, will say G3383 means. So that's what these different numbers are. That way you don't have to know the Greek. Now, what you can do is put your cursor over the number, and it gives you the number, the word in Greek, then how you pronounce it in English, mete, and then a short definition, neither, nor, not even, so much, or not so much as. So you get a brief little definition, but here's the real cool part. You right click on the number. You go to quick search, and you can search on that word in the entire Bible, just in the Old Testament, just in the New Testament. Now in Greek, it's only going to be in the New Testament, or just in the book of Matthew. Let's click on the entire New Testament. And what you get is a listing of all the occurrences of that Greek word. And at the bottom, there's a little chart. So that word appears 37 times in the New Testament in 18 verses. 6 times in Matthew, 1 in Mark, 7 in Luke, right on down. You can then actually study each one. Now, I don't like studying in the King James. So what you can do is switch the main program back to the ESV, and then you just double click on the verse, and there it is highlighted in the ESV. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God. So that's probably the word. Here in the King James it says neither by, but in the ESV it says either by. So you're studying the word in context. You know it's the correct Greek word because you've clicked on the number, but now you're looking at it in English. So let me give you an example of where this can be helpful. Let's go to, and here's how you navigate. This little Bible has all the books of the Bible. Let's go to John 6:44. Jesus says, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. Now, classic Calvin Arminian debate. Is this drawing of God to Christ the general wooing that God is making toward all of humanity? Or is this the specific forceful election and irresistible grace that a Calvinist would say of the elect? So what I want to do is a word study on that word draw and ask the question, is it a gentle word in other contexts or a strong word? So let's switch to King James Plus. We find the word draw in King James, which had sent me draw him. It's 1670. Right click, do a quick search. Let's do it on the entire New Testament. And we discover that the word appears 8 times in 8 verses. 5 in John, 2 in Acts, 1 in James. So now let's take a look at our results. And I'm going to switch it over to the ESV. And let's start at the back. Let's start on James. So I double click on James. And here we see, but you have dishonored the poor man, are not the rich ones who oppress you, and the ones who drag you into court. So the word there, it's the same word, but it's people being dragged into court. I would say that's a pretty strong use of the word. It occurs 2 times in Acts. One in Acts 21:30. Then all the city was stirred up, and the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged, there's the word, him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. Wow, that's a very strong word. He is being dragged against his will. How about the other occurrence in Acts? Acts 16:19. But when her owner, this is about that slave girl in Acts 16, but when her owners saw that their hope of gain was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace. Wow, again, very forceful use of the word drag. Now let's take a look at it in John. John 21:11. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net. I'm assuming that's the word. We can check it out in John 21. Simon Peter went up and drew the net. Yes, so that's the same word. Hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. So here's a dragging of a net. Seems pretty forceful. I don't think the fish want to go there, but they're being dragged. John 21:6. He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. So there's that word again being used with a net full of fish. Let's go to John 18:10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. Again, pretty forceful. Now, at this point, the Calvinists would say, I think it's irresistible drawing. Well, there's one last verse that makes it not so easy. John 12:32. Jesus says, and when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. So here, the Arminian would come in and say, but not all are drawn irresistibly. So here's a use of it where it is not an irresistible strong drawing. It seems to be more of a gentle wooing. Now the Calvinist would come back and say that when I am lifted up from the earth will draw all people. That's not drawing each and every one, but people from all different groups. And you say, well, that's reading into the verse, and they would come back and say, well, no, earlier there were some Greeks who wanted to talk to Jesus. And right here, now among those who went up to worship at the feast were some Greeks. So these came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and asked him, sir, we wish to see Jesus. And then by the time you get down to this verse, the Calvinists would say, well, that's what he's talking about, drawing all people, not just Jews, but Jews and Gentiles. So the debate goes on. But while this study of the word draw may not solve the age-old Calvin Arminian issue, I think it gives you an illustration of how doing a word study, reading words in context, can help you understand at least the range of meaning. Let me give you one more kind of classic example. Let's go to James 2:24. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. Well, there goes the whole Reformation. Because Protestants would say that the Bible teaches that you're justified by faith alone, not by works. And James says you see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. So now what do we do with this? Well, when there's an apparent contradiction in Scripture, you have to say, well, it can't be. Scripture can't contradict. Might it be that the words don't mean the same in every context? Does this word justified mean justified everywhere? Now, Paul uses the word justified to mean declared right before God. So you're justified, you're declared righteous before God, not by works, but by your faith, because when you have faith, Christ's righteousness is given to you. Does it mean that here? Well, my question is, does justified always mean declared right before God? So let's do a quick word study. Go to King James Plus. Let's find the word justified right here. It's G1344. Right click. Let's do a quick search on the New Testament. In our search box, we discover that the word is used 40 times in 36 verses. Here's the breakdown. And let's just start looking at, okay, we'll switch it back to ESV. Let's start looking at the very first occurrence, Matthew 11:19. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by her deeds. Now, wait a minute. That can't mean declared righteous before God. This seems to be saying demonstrated to be righteous or wise before men. So here, our very first hit, we see that justified doesn't always mean declared right before God. It can mean demonstrated to be right before men. So now what you want to do is you want to go back to James and see if that is a possible meaning that makes sense. So you go to James, and in the context, we read, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to him, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them things needed for the body, what good is that? So also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me. Oh, so the issue is, how do you show to others? Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. So here the context is about, how do you demonstrate that your faith is real? How do you justify before man that your works are genuine, or your faith is genuine? By your works. So now let's plug that into verse 24. You see that a person is proven or demonstrated to be right before God by works. Not declared right before God by his works, but demonstrated to be right before God, before men, or before God. Let me say it again. You see that a person is demonstrated to be right before God. He demonstrates it to men by his works, not by faith alone. So there you have this tool, eSword. Hopefully you have a bit of a clue of how to do a word study. It is a fantastic tool. I use it every day, and hopefully you will too. God bless. Have a great day.